All right, everybody, welcome back. It's ready to dive in.
Always.
Today, we're tackling something you guys specifically requested, a deep dive into employee retention strategies.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and you guys sent in some super interesting notes. Clearly been putting in some serious thought on this one.
For sure. Lots to unpack here.
Whether you're, prepping for a big presentation, leading a team, or just, fascinated by this whole world of attracting and keeping top talent.
Yeah.
We're gonna break it all down today.
Love it.
And to help us do that, I brought in an expert.
That's me.
Yeah, who lives and breathes this stuff. So
It's true. It's true. I mean, employee retention, right? That's like the million-dollar question for so many companies out there.
it's huge. And, I'm seeing from the notes that, it seems like some companies are kind of moving away from, all those flashy perks.
Oh, yeah.
Like ping pong tables and, the gourmet coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of dig in a little deeper. What's the thinking behind that shift?
It's really interesting. We're seeing that, those superficial perks,
Sure.
they're kind of like a sugar rush. They might get people in the door,
Right.
but they don't necessarily keep them around.
I see.
I mean, all the research that you flagged,
Yeah.
it really shows that, employees today, they're looking for more than just, a cool office space.
Yeah.
They crave things like a sense of purpose.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Opportunities to actually learn and grow.
Right.
And that feeling of being genuinely valued,
Interesting.
by the organization.
So it's less about the stuff and more about the kind of, the substance.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head there. It's all about creating this environment, where people actually feel connected
Mm-hmm.
to the bigger picture. Like their contributions are actually recognized,
That's good.
celebrated, and they have a chance, to continually develop their skills and advance their careers.
Okay. Yeah. So how do companies actually create that kind of environment?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the nutrients, so to speak, that really help employees thrive and want to stay?
One of I guess you could say the biggest nutrients is professional development.
Ah, okay.
You actually highlighted a case study, remember?
Yeah.
In your notes about this tech company that, they totally revamped their approach to employee training.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just, doing those generic workshops,
Mm-hmm.
they actually sat down and they created personalized development plans
Oh,
for
sure.
each employee,
Yeah.
focusing on, their individual goals
Wow.
and aspirations. And guess what?
What?
Their retention rates, they went through the roof.
That's pretty amazing. Isn't there a risk, though, like if you invest all this time and money into training,
Yeah.
that the employees just,
Yeah.
take their shiny new skill
Right.
and just jump ship?
It's a totally valid concern. I mean, yeah.
I get why you'd think that.
Yeah.
But actually, the studies show kind of the opposite.
Really?
Employees who feel like their company is investing in them.
Right.
They're growing, they're learning.
Yeah.
They're actually more likely to stick around.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like this, it builds loyalty and this feeling of reciprocity. Like, hey, they're investing in me.
Yeah.
I'm going to invest in them.
I'm going to invest back.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really reassuring to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got the professional development. What about work-life balance?
Oh, yeah.
That seemed to be a big theme in the notes as well.
Huge. And this is where things get really, really fascinating.
Okay, yeah.
Like, we're seeing a fundamental shift
Okay.
in how employees just view this whole work-life balance thing.
Yeah.
It's not just, clocking out at 5 p.m. anymore.
Right.
It's about having the flexibility
Mm-hmm.
to manage, their lives, their families, their personal commitments
Yeah.
without feeling like they're going to get penalized,
Mhm.
Yeah, totally.
So things like, flexible schedules, the option to work remotely, and even, generous parental leave policies.
Right.
Those are becoming non-negotiables for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Especially, millennials and Gen Z.
It seems like, companies are finally realizing that people,
Yeah.
have lives outside of the office.
Right. It's a revolutionary concept. But seriously, the companies that actually embrace this,
Yeah.
they're attracting amazing talent.
Yeah.
They're seeing this, boost in productivity and, you guessed it,
Yeah.
better retention rates.
Makes sense.
You even highlighted a study that showed that companies with strong work-life balance initiatives,
Mm.
they had way lower burnout rates among their employees.
A burnt-out employee isn't exactly,
Yeah.
a productive or loyal one.
No, definitely not. So you've got professional development.
Yeah.
We've got work-life balance.
Mm.
But there's this other crucial element we can't forget about.
Okay, what's that?
Recognition.
Ah, yes.
Uh,
Everyone loves a good pat on the back. But how do companies make recognition meaningful and not just feel like, some empty praise?
you're right. That's the real trick, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be genuine.
Exactly. It has to be genuine and
Yeah.
specific. You actually pointed to a study
Mm-hmm.
that analyzed the impact of different types of recognition.
Yeah, yeah.
And what they found
Uh-huh.
was things like public acknowledgement,
Oh,
peer-to-peer recognition,
hmm.
and even those, small personalized tokens of appreciation.
Right.
Those were way more effective than, just generic company-wide bonuses.
So it's like those smaller, more personal gestures that really hit home.
Exactly. It all goes back to that feeling of like truly being seen
Mm.
and valued for your individual contributions.
Yeah.
A handwritten note from a manager,
Wow.
a shout out during a team meeting,
Yeah.
even something as small as a gift card to their favorite coffee shop. These small things, they can have a huge impact on morale and loyalty.
It's like it's the thought that counts.
That's it.
Wow. This is giving me a lot to think about.
Mhm.
We covered professional development,
Yeah.
work-life balance,
Mhm.
recognition,
Big ones.
and this whole idea of creating this culture
Yeah.
where employees feel valued,
Yes.
respected.
So important.
Wow.
A lot to chew on.
So thinking about your work environment, like what's one strategy you could implement tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
to boost retention?
It's a great question.
Yeah. Keep those ideas brewing, and we'll see you next time.
See you then.
Okay, so today we're going deep on something I think everyone listening can relate to,
Mm-hmm.
employee engagement and motivation.
Yeah.
We've got some excerpts from a text that takes a really interesting approach, looking at all of this through the lens of HR.
Interesting. Yeah. And the way this source frames it is not just about like, individual people feeling motivated or not.
Right.
It's really saying there's a systemic element here, tied to HR practices and the culture at a company.
Okay, so let's say you're in HR or you're a manager.
Mm.
What can we actually do with that knowledge? Like what jumps out as a takeaway?
Even without specific details, just how this source frames it hints at some pretty crucial areas. The first being measurement.
Okay.
How do we even know if people are engaged? It implies that, we need solid metrics.
Okay.
You can think about the Gallup Q12,
Right.
Which assesses these key elements of engagement through surveys.
Yeah.
It's not perfect,
Right.
but it gives you data,
Yeah.
a starting point.
But isn't there a risk of like over-relying on metrics? Like it seems like some aspects of engagement, like passion or purpose,
Yeah.
are hard to quantify.
That's a great point. Numbers tell part of the story,
Yeah.
but qualitative feedback, one-on-one conversations,
Uh-huh.
those are also vital.
Sure.
It's about finding a balance.
Yeah.
And speaking of balance, the source also implies a need for specific strategies.
Right, because free pizza only gets you so far.
Right, exactly.
So what kind of strategies are we talking about?
Think about programs, where employees can recognize each other's contributions.
Uh-huh.
That can boost morale and a sense of belonging.
Right.
Or HR could facilitate, mentorship
Right.
programs,
Yeah.
pairing junior employees with, more experienced ones.
Yeah, that's great.
This not only develops, their skills, but fosters a more supportive culture.
And this ties back to something, the outline highlighted.
Yeah,
It's not all on HR,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
What is the individual's role in all of this?
Well, engaged employees are proactive.
Right.
They communicate openly with their managers. They seek growth opportunities.
Right.
And actively, contribute to a positive team dynamic.
This reminds me of something I read about Google's approach to engagement.
Mm-hmm.
They empower employees to dedicate 20% of their time to passion projects.
Oh, yeah.
That not only fosters innovation, but it shows trust in the employees
Yeah.
and allows them to really explore their interests.
That's a fantastic example of how a company can nurture both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Right.
The 20% time taps into, people's passions and desires for growth,
Yeah.
but also provides recognition and potential rewards for successful projects.
So we've talked about HR's role
Yeah.
and individual responsibility.
Uh-huh.
But why should you, the listener, care about all of this, even if you're not in HR or managing a team?
Because engaged employees create better products. provide better service and drive innovation.
Yeah.
It impacts us all as consumers, as clients, even as citizens.
Right.
Think about a company you love doing business with.
Yeah.
Chances are they've got a pretty engaged workforce behind the scenes.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Engaged employees lead to a better experience for everybody.
Right.
We've covered a lot, but, you know, the source focused mainly on HR, and it leaves me wondering, where does company leadership fit into all of this?
Hmm.
How much does the behavior of leaders from the CEO down to direct managers influence employee engagement and motivation?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
That's something to think about.
Definitely.
This deep dive has given you some new perspectives on how you can influence engagement, both as an employee and as a leader.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little bit more, I guess, in-depth than you might think at first.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about onboarding and orientation.
Okay.
And, you think about it and you're like, oh, okay, first day at the job, you get, the tour, you sign some papers.
Right.
But there's really a lot more to it than that. And that's what we're going to kind of unpack today. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So to kick things off, maybe you can give us a little bit more of a clear definition of what exactly onboarding and orientation are, because I think those two terms get thrown around a lot and they kind of get used interchangeably.
Yeah, they definitely do. And I think a good way to think about it is orientation is kind of like dipping your toes in the water, right? It's like the basics, the paperwork, the introductions, learning where the restrooms are, that sort of thing. Whereas onboarding is more of a deep dive.
Okay.
It's really about immersing those new hires in the company culture, getting them up to speed on their specific roles and really setting them up for long-term success.
So it's not just like, knowing the company policies, but it's like really understanding how to work within the company.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, a well-structured onboarding process can include things like mentorship programs
Right.
where you have, a seasoned employee kind of guiding a new hire, or even like a buddy system, just to help with those, initial anxieties and questions that come up. And some companies will even organize like social events
Oh, wow.
specifically for new hires,
Okay.
to kind of encourage that bonding and that sense of belonging right from the get-go.
So it sounds like it's not just a process, it's like an actual strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess what's the big deal? Like, what kind of impact does this actually have, on the company itself?
Well, I mean, studies have shown that there's a really strong correlation between a positive onboarding experience and, increased employee retention.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And not just that, but, engaged employees are more productive.
Right.
Right. So, and then when you start to factor in the cost of replacing employees,
Okay.
all the recruiting and the training and the lost productivity, a good onboarding process can actually save the company money in the long run.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's actually a term for this. It's called employee lifetime value. And it basically means, the longer an employee stays with a company and contributes, the more valuable they become.
That's really interesting because you don't often think of, an employee as like an asset in that way, but I guess they really are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess let's flip the script a little bit and think about what happens when a company doesn't get onboarding, right? What are some of the red flags or like things that you see that kind of show that maybe a company isn't doing it the best way?
Well, I mean, imagine starting a new job and you just feel completely lost,
Yeah.
You don't know who to ask for help. Your role is unclear. The company culture seems like a mystery. I mean, that's just a recipe for frustration and disengagement.
Right.
And in fact, poor onboarding is a major contributor to early employee turnover. I mean, think about it. If your first impression of a company is negative, you're much less likely to stick around.
Yeah. It's almost like starting a relationship on the wrong foot.
Exactly.
Just kind of sets a bad tone from the beginning.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, how can we apply this knowledge, whether, we're new employees ourselves or maybe even managers who are responsible for, onboarding new employees?
Well, I think it all comes down to being proactive if you're a new employee. Don't be afraid to ask questions, seek out mentors,
Right.
Actively participate in any onboarding activities that are offered. And as a manager, think about the experience you're creating. Are you providing clear expectations, resources, opportunities for connection?
So I guess what we've learned today is that onboarding and orientation are more than just those first day formalities.
Right.
They're actually strategic processes that significantly impact the employee experience, retention, and then ultimately a company's success.
Yeah. And, it brings to mind an interesting question that I think, maybe our listeners can ponder, which is, thinking about your own workplace. What's one small change that you could implement tomorrow to make that onboarding experience more impactful?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, hey, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope that you learned some valuable insights into the world of onboarding and orientation.
absolutely.
And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.